quite fitting how we're doing for time, even with our bit of a delay getting started this morning. Because my opening line for what I wrote was, I'm not, in the short 30 minutes that I have allotted this Sunday, able to cover all that I've learned in my class. Because, well, it was a whole semester for the class, trying to condense that down into a half hour is a bit of a hard thing to do, but give it a shot. I've been using a lot of my Japanese music collection because the Lotus Sutra is actually more of a Japanese, it's more popular in Japan than it is in China or India. Actually, the Lotus Sutra is attributed to being the Buddhist text that actually influenced a lot of Japanese culture. And being a bit of a person that's interested in Japanese culture, my art style is based off of the manga, cartoon style in Japan. I've done some martial arts training and in the past. So it was very much the whole thing. I found that Lotus Sutra was being offered, and the bio about it on the school's website was talking about being a Japanese Buddhist tradition. I was definitely very interested in taking it. So, so basically being a popular in Japan actually ties into the history of it. The original Sanskrit versions of the sutra had been lost, so there's no original Sanskrit edition of it, because it originally left from India into China. Back during that time, China was very Chinese-centric. They had actually, their name for China, for the country, was actually the center, Middle Earth, center of the world. So anytime any foreign text came into the country, they translate into Chinese, and then they'd just be like, well, we don't need this anymore, and get rid of it. And so it got translated to Chinese, and then it got moved over to Japan, and the original text just got lost. So it has that interesting thing where there's some people that are like, well, it sounds like it was written later and it's not as old as it claims to be. A little gray area in that. Is it really as old as it claims? Was there even original Sanskrit text? A lot of debate, but it still has that aspect of, because I bring a lot of science fiction and contemporary stories into some of my past services, so I thought that was it. Even though it doesn't have an original text, it doesn't have the original copy, there may have not been an original copy, but it still is something that has a spiritual value, it still has meaning, resonated with me, even though it has that little bit of controversy about, well, where's the original? So the Lotus Sutra, I'd asked some of the other practicing Buddhists here, John and Bruce and Dave, if they had read it before when I got the textbooks, and none of them were, no, I haven't, had no experience with it. So I was going into it with just myself reading, and talked a little bit with Dave one time after I got a couple of the books read. So the Lotus Sutra, it's the most like when I was talking in class, it came out as being the most Unitarian Universalist of any of the sutras, because it's one path for everybody, which is kind of the flip-flop. Instead of being, our ideas of being there's multiple paths, it's not one path for everybody, it's everybody gets to the same destination their own way. That was one of the things in class we were talking about. I thought a lot of people were having a bit of an issue with, because we do have that whole personal freedom idea of, it's not a set doctrine of this, do this, do this, do this, and you reach your salvation, enlightenment, nirvana. But it's the whole practice of it's not set. It's not a set order. It's a practice order. It's coming to church every weekend. It's the rituals that lead you to enlightenment. That's the message that is contained inside the Lotus Sutra. Because before that, there was the three vehicles. So there was two different groups. There was three different groups. The Shrivikas, Partyitkas, and the Buddhavistas. So there's the lay members, those that sought enlightenment on their own path, and those that were on the path to becoming Buddhas themselves. The first two, the lay members and the ones that were just seeking enlightenment on their own way, didn't believe that people could actually become a Buddha. That the Buddha was kind of a set, only these people who are Buddhas and have always been Buddhas will be Buddhas. The Buddhavistas believed that they had been Buddhas in a past life and they would be able to become a Buddha again as long as they stayed on the path. And in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha spoke to them and said, no, anybody can become a Buddha. All you have to do, everybody has to be able to get on the path. You don't reach just personal enlightenment and then you stop. You can go further and reach Buddhahood. So it was this universal Buddhahood. It was universal enlightenment, universal salvation. So again, the most Unitarian Universalist of the text. But there's always, a lot of the opening chapters of the Lotus Sutra say, if you understand the Lotus Sutra, if you can understand just a little bit of it, you will reach enlightenment. But you are only ever going to be able to understand a little bit of it until you reach enlightenment. And my professor was drawing a cube and talking about how you can only see like one aspect of a cube. Because when you draw a cube on a flat piece of paper, you only see 1, 2, 3 sides. So that's that whole aspect of, until you actually reach a higher stage, then you're able to see the whole.
This way, up top.
Hang on.
We know what a cube looks
on the
like.
other side.
Yeah, also need to bring up. If anybody wants to look through this later, I actually am horrible at taking exact notes, so I always end up doing doodles. So everything that's in this sketchbook was from my trip to Chicago. So this is all of my notes and sketches from when I was there. So yeah, but no, once you reach to be able to see that, but he started off with having the cube like this, and I was all like, okay, so I've, again, read a lot of science fiction. Anybody ever heard of Flatland? It's a story that's written from the perspective of people that live in a two-dimensional world. So they're talking about if you encountered a round ball in a two-dimensional world, and the ball's moving through the two-dimensional world, you'd have a small circle, then the circle would get bigger. You'd have a small circle, and then the circle would get bigger as the ball moves through the flat world, and then get bigger and bigger, and then it would get smaller, 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 because you could only see that slice of a circle in a flat world. And I was thinking, okay, so if we could only see 1, 2, or 3 sides of the cube, but you know that the rest of the cube is there, I thought this was just a little bit too simple of an analogy. I was thinking more of the tesseract, or call it the hypercube, where you got a cube within a cube, where all of these sides are the same size, and you can't see a four-dimensional object in three-dimensional space. I just got a better. Drawing these is impossible at fast space. I actually have to take time to sit there and draw. I got a better drawing here. There's a better drawing actually on the cover of the order of service, but it's a little small scale, a little fuzzy. The drawing on the front of the cover is actually a smaller scan of one of my sketches from my classes, but I don't know, this is a little complex, it's maybe a little over people's heads, maybe mathematically a little bit not as enlightened, but it's a fun exercise where you can talk about four-dimensional space, two-dimensional space, three-dimensional space, and try to relate, because I found that the more I read the sutra, and the more I read the introduction actually breaks it down a little bit easier. I was seeing math, I was seeing this complex. I actually told one of my classmates in class that Buddhism is to theology what quantum mechanics is to mathematics, because it's this complex state where you have to study, and it takes a while for you to actually grok or completely understand it. It's a complex thing that takes a while. And one of the things we talked about in class was the idea of karma. And to help me visualize it, because you think, anybody, who knows what an oscilloscope is? Bill, you want to?
No, I don't.
An oscilloscope is a device that's used for measuring and looking at waves. When I was working as a radio DJ, we used to have one that monitored. So I'd have 4 radio stations going. I could only listen to one at one time, but I could look at 4 oscilloscopes and see each one of the stations is actually outputting a waveform, which is how radios work, because the wave goes out, the radio listens for the wave and translates it. So I thought about karma, because a wave goes like this. And you have, this is your 0 line, here's your positive, here's your negative. So when we started talking about karma, I thought of it a little bit like, well, you start off, if you did a bad thing, you start off with negative, and you try to do a positive thing in order to balance out the negative thing. And then sometime a little later, you'd have another bad thing, so you try to do this. And then sometimes you just have these sporadic, you do a really good thing, little bad thing, do a little good thing, really bad thing. And I just saw it as this wave going across. And I saw this 0 line, that emptiness, the nothingness that they talk about in Buddhism. A lot of people hear it and they think of the nihilism where nothing matters, it's a complete nothingness. I started thinking of it like this: positive and negative, and the 0 line, that reaching for nothingness, that calm during meditation, was trying to reach the 0 point, to get the balance in between the good and the bad. And the practice of Buddhism is getting so you don't have these huge spikes and chaoticness. You want to try to get your wave to be as close to that 0 line, to that balance, that nothingness as you can. So once that idea dawned on me, I started having the idea of the tesseract and the hypercube. And there was talk about the different worlds in the Lotus Sutra. And I started bringing in a little bit of like quantum mechanics and stuff like that into it. And I just started having a lot of fun with my nerdy sci-fi mind. So this was just really, this really does demonstrate and made it simplify for me, that idea. Because the nothingness, the emptiness of meditation, it's not about just going nihilistic. It is about finding this calm center line. So how you get to the calm center line is that eightfold path, and John's brought that up in a few of his. So just to reiterate, the eightfold path, the 8 rights right speech, not lying, not being rude, not gossiping, speaking to lead others to salvation, enlightenment, wisdom. It's one of those, I believe that's right over, yes, number one of the 4 agreements, be impeccable with your words, speak with integrity. That's that action of right path. Right livelihood is the idea of not living above your means, not consuming more than you need, not being greedy and selfish. Right effort is guarding your mind against, they say, sensual thoughts or negative emotions. Keeping your mind clear, keeping that waveform close to zero as you can. Right concentration, practicing the 4 stages of meditation, unifying the mind. Again, trying to get back to the 0 point. Keep your mental waves from being so chaotic. Right view, knowing that actions have consequences both in this life and in the next. That's always do your best. Number 4 of the agreements. Right resolve, focusing on being on the path towards loving kindness and compassion to the point of taking action and dedicating yourself. Finding a spiritual practice that works for you. For some of us, it's coming here to church every Sunday, being active members in the church community, volunteering, the meditation group that is on Monday nights at the beginning of the month, or the discussion groups that we have that we're going to be having tomorrow night. Having that spiritual practice and staying with it, even when when you dip down and you're not practicing your spiritual practice, and realizing, you can just admit to yourself, okay, I've dipped down into the negative. I've acknowledged that. I'm going to work and I'm going to resolve and dedicate myself to work better, and realizing that you do have that fluctuation. That's the right resolve. And there's also, one of the things I like about the Lotus Sutra, there's a lot of parables. Like I said earlier, I like to bring science fiction stories into some of my services. But one of the stories in the Lotus Sutra I really liked was the story of the hidden gem. Basically, the story starts off is one man is about ready to leave his hometown, go off to seek his fortune. And his best friend says, okay, we'll have one last night with you in town before you set sail across the world and try to find your fortune and, have a glorious life. So come over to my house, we'll have a great party. The two of them, they have way too much wine. The friend that's traveling falls asleep. The friend that was saying goodbye to his friend decides, I know what I'll do. He's going to go off, seek his fortune. I'm going to give him a little help. Goes and finds this takes this priceless gem. It's worth a lot of money. Takes it and sews it into his sleeping friend's robes. Doesn't tell him about it. The friend wakes up in the morning, the one that sewed the gem into the robes is gone. So he goes, gets on the boat, sails away, and the two of them, after many, many years, finally meet each other. And the friend that sailed away to make his fortune had worked hard all those years, built himself up, had his own, he had his own successful business. He was doing well for himself, but he never found the gem. And the friend that had given him the gem, without his knowledge, asked, well, did you find the gem? And is this how you had all the success? And the friend's like, no, I didn't even know that I've been carrying this around. And then they sell the gem and split the money and are able to do it. And it's that whole idea. I feel that story is part of the Lotus Sutra because that enlightenment, the ability for everybody to be enlightened, that's that gem. All of your, and it takes the hard work and the dedication until you can be able to find it. It's not the easy, quick path. It's a path of work and resolve. And especially where I was sick out during these intensives and 8 hours a day of classwork, all the hard work and the problems of overcoming it while I was there, that day of coming back from being sick and then hearing that one of my classmates discuss this parable, it really stuck with me. It's like, yeah, okay, this is me putting in the hard work, this is me putting in my time, and definitely reaffirmed that to me about my seminary path. So it's become my favorite out of the parables in the Lotus Sutra so far. So that's the crash course introduction. If you're interested in learning more, you can look for the threefold Lotus Sutra online. You can download it as PDF, read it on your electronic devices, or you can order a copy of it from Amazon. Bruce Glick actually set up the Amazon Smile account for the church. I've actually been using it for my new textbooks. So if you shop on Amazon, it's an automatic, same price for everything, but it's an automatic donation to the church. And anybody wants to, after the service during the coffee hour, come up and check out the books. The Introduction to Lotus Sutra and Buddhist Concepts were the two hard copies I got. So, and that is the Lotus Sutra. I know it's not on here, but I did want to give a quick seminarian report just as I was doing that. Last semester I showed off my huge stack of textbooks. This is the stack I got for this semester. It's about half of what last semester's was. So if anybody's interested in finding out what I'll be studying about and what a possible future sermon will be, the stack will be up here also during the coffee hour.